The ancient town of Sychar, which is mentioned in this gospel reading, no longer exists, but the well in the story, known as Jacob's Well, is still in limited use. I visited the well with some others in our sabbatical group in 1997. It was located in the basement crypt of an unfinished Russian Orthodox church. Now, in the past, 2 other churches had been built over Jacob's Well, but both of them had been destroyed. The first was destroyed by what is called the Samaritan Uprising in the year 530. Now, in the homiletic notes that you have, I have a mistake there. I said it was destroyed by the Persians. It was a Samaritan Uprising. And the second, a church built by the Crusaders, was destroyed by the Muslims. And this present church was, the construction began in 1917. And obviously they've been having trouble with construction, but World War I came along and the politics entered into the situation. It was being built by the Russian Orthodox Church. And it's still standing there. I don't know if much has been done since World War I, but it's still in a state of incompletion. The Russian Orthodox Church has pretty much left the Holy Land. The only other place where I know that they're present is this beautiful church of St. Mary Magdalene on the Mount of Olives. And I think that's the only place where they are present. There's only a few of the monks there at that church. Well, anyway, we made our way into this roofless church and went down what was to be the center aisle, and on either side there were a lot of scattering of construction stones amid the weeds. And up in what it was to be the sanctuary, there's a shed. You go into the shed and there are steps, and you step down then into the crypt. And at the bottom of the crypt there's kind of a smallish room, and there you have the well. I'm sure that the ancient pilgrims eagerly drank the water from the well that quenched Jesus' thirst, but we modern pilgrims are often too concerned about sanitation to take a drink. When the guide cranked up water in a bucket from deep in the well, he offered me a cup of water, and like many of the others in our group, used the water to put it on our hands as an act of reverence, but we didn't drink the water. And then outside the walls of the church, you can look up and you can see Mount Gerizim, which is the mountain referred to in the reading today. At the top of Mount Gerizim, there is the ruins of the Samaritan Temple. This shrine, or this Jacob's Well, there's not much of a shrine there, but the Jacob's Well is located just outside the present-day city of Nablus. Now, a word about Nablus. After the destruction of Jerusalem in 72, the Romans built a colony there, and they named it Flavius Neapolis, which has been shortened to Nablus. This is the largest Palestinian city in the West Bank with a population of over 160,000. And it's often been in the news because of harsh measures taken here by the Israeli military. And as a result, I think it would probably be very difficult for a pilgrim today to visit Jacob's Well. Now, in ancient times, a well was of special significance. It became a kind of center of village life. Villages were built around or near a well because water was a basic necessity, and it was a scarce necessity in this city area. And so each day, women would come out to the well, or would congregate at the well each taking their turns to draw up water and to pour it into their pots or jars. And then they would carry the water back in their jars on their heads in the manner that we see women carrying water today in Calavera. It was at this daily gathering place at the well that the local news and gossip was passed around. The Old Testament tells stories of famous couples meeting at the village well, and this includes well-known patriarchs. For example, Abraham sent one of his servants to the village well to find a wife for his son Isaac. And the young woman that was selected was Rebekah. And years later, Isaac and Rebekah's son, named Jacob, met his beloved at a well, and it's not the same well as today's Jacob's well. It was later on that Jacob built a well. But to impress the young woman, Jacob showed off by lifting the heavy stone lid of the well. She was duly impressed, and so Rachel became his wife. And Moses met his wife Zipporah at a well. So you see that there is, it was common to find your beloved at the well, and it is mentioned as a place of meeting for the patriarchs and their wives. Now, in today's gospel story, Jesus meets a woman at the village well. And the fact that this is the patriarch Jacob's well connects this meeting with the other encounters in the Old Testament of patriarchs at the well, patriarchs and their wives-to-be. Jesus asks the Samaritan woman for a drink, and she asks him for the living water that will quench her thirst forever. Now, in John's Gospel, at least in one other case, he does not name a very important person in a story. And it is thought by some that this is John's technique of inviting us into the story. Who is that? Well, you, the reader. In this case, the woman is given no name because she would represent all those who are thirsty for the water of eternal life. And so all of us come to the well this morning to encounter the Lord. Now, obviously, John, the gospel writer, presents this encounter of Jesus with the woman at Jacob's well in the tradition of the other Old Testament stories of encounters at the well. In this case, Jesus comes to find his beloved. Now, step back from the story and see what happens just before this in John's gospel. And what we find is that John the Baptist compares himself to the best man at a wedding. And the bridegroom of the wedding is the Messiah. And it seems that that is inviting us, the reader, to see that Jesus is the groom here at the well, and we have come to meet him. We are the bride, the beloved of the Lord. That is one way of interpreting this beautiful story. This image of the Lord as the groom and we as the bride has often been used by the mystics. God, it says, is enchanted with us and seeks intimacy with us. At the well, Jesus begins the dialogue with the woman, and he says, "Give me a drink." He, the Lord, is thirsty. He longs for his beloved. Now, this is a truth that can quench our deepest thirst as we make our pilgrim journey home to God. It reminds us that we do not travel alone. God loves us deeply and accompanies us. And as the beloved, we can kind of image this as the Lord holding our hand. today's story encourages us then to ask the Lord to quench our thirst as did the woman. And what he says is an invitation. He says, whoever drinks the water that I shall give will never thirst. When the people of the town invite Jesus into their homes, he goes and he stays with them. And this encourages us to invite the Lord this morning to live with us. He will come and stay with us because he is the groom who loves us deeply. The woman in the story has an important role as a witness. And this reminds me of another woman who has had an important role as a witness in another story, a very tragic story, and let me tell you about it, about her. This morning I want to honor the memory of that woman, Rufina Amaya of El Salvador, who died early this week. She was the only survivor and the only witness who has testified to the deliberate massacre of over 1,100 men, women, and children on December 12 and 13 in 1980. It was in the town of El Mozote, which is about 15 miles from our communities of Calavera. Rufina has been willing to accompany groups to El Mozote to tell them firsthand what happened there. And she has accompanied our delegations many times to the killing field to point out the bushes where she hid and saw what happened and heard what happened. And so she is able to tell the story. And she tells the story through her tears. She told how the soldiers came in the morning on the first day. They locked the women and children in homes and the men in the church. And then they began to kill the men there in the church, shooting them and slitting their throats, and then they burned the church down. Then they came for the women. They left the children locked in the homes, led the women away, and in the hysterical chaos, Rufina was able to slip away and hide under a bush. And from there, she watched what happened. She said that the soldiers lined up the women about 20 at a time and machine gunned them. Then they killed the children. And forensic experts who have explored the remains, the skeletal remains, tell us that most of the victims at El Mozote were children. Rufina said, they killed 4 of my children, my 9-year-old, my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old, and my 8-month-old daughter. And her husband was among those victims there in the church. In the darkness, she was able to slip away and run and hide in the hills, where she had nothing to eat or drink for 7 days and nights, before she was found by someone who took care of her. It is important, while remembering Rufina and the victims of El Mozote, to remember as well that the massacre was committed by the Atlacatl Battalion, an elite Salvadoran army unit trained in counterinsurgency by the U.S. government at the School of the Americas. Rufina painfully retold her story many times because, she said, God allowed me to live so that I can testify that the army killed the men, women, and children. Later, Rufina married and had a daughter named Marta. Our delegations have met with Marta and her mother, Rufina, many times. Rufina is a victim witness, a hero for her people, and our good friend. She has gone home to God to be with the victims of El Mozote. And I have placed on the small table in the lobby copies of Rufina's testimony. It's not very long, and you may pick one up and take it with you after Mass. I visited El Mozote for the first time in 1992, and the town had still been abandoned those 12 years. And it was kind of late afternoon. The weeds were about knee-high. And in El Salvador, in the mountains, there is an insect that gives off a kind of a high whistle. It has a kind of keening sound. And I remember that as in the twilight, in the late afternoon, we walked there in this place of great tragedy. And there were, in our group, there were 4 of us and a guide. And there was a well that was part of this thing. And the well was where a lot of the children had been thrown down into the well. And when we were leaving, in the tall weeds, and it was getting twilight, my foot caught on something near at the well, and I reached down and picked it up. And it was a child's shoe. And it had kind of rotted in the 12 years it had sat there, but this would be one of the children in that struggle at the well. The shoe had come off and was lost in the scuffle. And I brought it back as a way of remembering the children of El Mozote. And I'll leave it here after Mass. You may want to come up and examine it.